After moments of silence, Ella looked at James with eyes full of pain and fear. The lights had come back on, but her heart was still in utter chaos. "James," she whispered softly, I can't live in this terror anymore. You're the only one who's made me feel safe in this hell, and She paused for a moment, as if searching for the words to express what she was feeling. James looked at her with understanding and gently took her hand. "Ella, I'm here for you. You will never face this nightmare alone." Then Ella looked into his eyes and closed hers for a moment, taking a deep breath. "James, love you, and I want to be your partner for life. I don't want to be afraid anymore. I don't want to be alone, and you make me feel safe. Can you stay with me forever?" James didn't hesitate. He smiled tenderly and said, "I love you too, Ella, and I will never leave you. We will be together no matter the circumstances. I'll make sure you never have to be afraid again." Then, in a moment filled with emotions, James leaned in, gently cupping her face in his hands. "You're an amazing person, and I'm lucky to be here with you," he said before leaning in to kiss her. It was a soft kiss, filled with safety and comfort amidst all the chaos and darkness surrounding them. But suddenly, while they were in that romantic moment, a loud crash echoed from the ceiling. The sound was intense, as if the entire roof had suddenly collapsed. The wind howled outside, and the rainstorm poured heavily, making the atmosphere even darker and more suffocating. The rain battered the windows violently, and the wind was tearing through everything around them. Ella jolted in fear, her eyes filled with tears. "James, what's happening now? What's next?" she said, her voice trembling with terror. James rushed to her and pulled her into his arms, trying to calm her. "Don't be afraid, Ella. We're together. I won't leave you, and we'll get through this together. Whatever happens, we'll face it side by side." As the storm raged around them, with the sounds of things crashing outside and the wind tearing at the trees, James remained steady, holding Ella, whispering in her ear to calm her. He knew that these moments of fear were what would strengthen their bond, and that no matter what happened next, as long as they were together, they could face it all. As Ella and James held each other, trying to overcome the fear that surrounded them, the air suddenly became thicker, as if an invisible force was pressing in on them from all sides. The rain continued to fall heavily, but there was something unnatural about the atmosphere. The darkness deepened, and the sounds from outside were mingling with strange frequencies, as though something in the house was watching them. Ella looked at James with concern and asked in a trembling voice, "Do you feel something strange?" James looked around cautiously, as if something in the air had shifted. Then, without saying a word, he slowly turned toward the far corner of the room, where the darkness seemed to hide behind itself. In that moment, they saw something glimmering in the dark. The shape was blurry, unclear, but enough for their eyes to make out. A huge, dark, and cold shadow stood in the corner, not speaking, not moving, but staring at them. It looked at them carefully, its eyes gleaming with malice. It seemed as though it was studying every movement they made. Then, suddenly, a demonic, terrifying laugh filled the room. The laugh of evil echoed through the air, as if it had come from the depths of hell itself. As the sound began to fade, the shadow spoke, but its words were unintelligible, carrying an immense, sinister power. "The old woman has entered the house," the shadow said, laughing wickedly, as if drowning the room in coldness. "You have no idea what will happen next, you fools. You can't escape from me or from her." It then looked at them with a mocking gaze, adding another chilling laugh. "You are just a game in my hands, idiots. You try to survive, but in the end you'll fall." The words filled the air with evil, and the voice struck terror into their hearts. James and Ella felt an uncomfortable sensation creeping into their bones, as the shadow remained still, staring at them as if death was chasing them. "Why can't you escape?" the shadow said finally, before suddenly vanishing into the darkness, leaving behind a feeling of mystery and horror. Ella froze in fear, unable to move. She shook her head and said, "What does this mean? Who is the old woman? Is she alive?" Will she kill us? James held her tightly, trying to calm her as much as possible. But he knew that the most terrifying thing was the truth hidden behind those evil words. Ella's father slammed his fist against the door, causing James to jump in fear as he rushed to open it. As soon as the door swung open, Ella's father lunged at James, grabbing him by the collar of his shirt with force, his eyes burning with rage. "What were you doing with my daughter?" he yelled, his voice filled with anger and suspicion, making James tremble and cry, trying to justify himself amidst the shock of the moment. Ella quickly intervened, her voice trembling. "No, Dad, please stop. James is just my friend. He's here to help me and protect me. There's nothing else. Please believe me." Ella pleaded with a sincere tone, trying to calm her father's anger and convince him of the truth, while James stood there helpless, filled with sadness and pain from the misunderstanding. Ella's father sighs slightly, trying to calm himself, then looks at James and says in a less harsh tone, "All right, I'll give you a chance to explain. Who are you, and why are you here with my daughter? Do you intend to do something disrespectful toward her?" James gathers his courage and responds honestly, "I'm here to protect Ella, sir. Strange things are happening in this house, and we've encountered spirits and ghosts. I'm just trying to help her overcome this terror." But Ella's father suddenly laughs mockingly, shaking his head in disbelief. "Ghosts? Really? Do you think I'm going to believe such nonsense? The truth is clear to me. You're here with intentions to do something immoral with my daughter. Leave her alone, you scoundrel, and get away from her immediately." James freezes in place, feeling the injustice of this misunderstanding, and looks at Ella with eyes full of sorrow and confusion. Ella looks at her father with tear-filled eyes, full of boldness and determination, and says, "Dad, James is not lying, and everything he said is the truth. He was here when you weren't. Where were you? You disappeared for a whole week, and I was alone, scared and abandoned. James took care of me and protected me. He stood by my side every moment." She points to James and adds passionately, "I want James with me. He's the one who understands me and protects me, and I trust him more than anyone else." Ella looks at her father in astonishment and says, with a tone full of disbelief, "What old lady are you talking about, Ella?" Ella swallows hard and tries to compose herself, replying in a soft voice, "She's the old lady who tried to harm me. She sent ghosts and a strange child to attack me. She lives in the dark, and she might be above us right now." Ella's father sighs, trying to stay calm, and says, "Ella, this is just imagination. There's no old lady. This is our house. There's nothing here." But before he can continue speaking, the lights suddenly go out, plunging them into complete darkness. In the eerie silence, a faint sound of slow footsteps can be heard coming from the upper floor, followed by a mysterious laugh, a laugh that makes hearts shiver, echoing through the walls. James grabs Ella's hand to reassure her, but she feels intense fear and whispers to her father, "Please, don't go upstairs. She's up there, the old lady." Her father stops for a moment, listening carefully to the sounds coming from upstairs, then swallows slowly and whispers, hesitantly, "If someone is really here, I'll find out." At that moment, the sounds rise again, mixed with terrifying laughter and muffled screams, making them feel an indescribable sense of dread. Ella's father looked at James sharply and said in a tense tone, "I told you, stay away from my daughter. What I know is that you're a stranger, and you have no place here." James felt anger ignite within him and responded sternly, "You don't understand. I've been here to protect her while you were gone. You don't even know what Ella has gone through." Her father stared at him defiantly and said, "You're acting like you're her savior, but I never asked you to come and pretend to be her hero." Ella began to cry, wrapping her arms around herself as she said in a choked voice, "Why won't you believe me, Dad? Everything I'm saying is true. I'm terrified. James has helped me all this time. You don't understand anything that's happened." But her father shook his head and replied sarcastically, trying to dismiss his daughter's fear, "Ella, you're just tired, and all this is just figments of your imagination." At that moment, The sounds of strong winds outside mixed with a deafening explosion, causing the power to go out suddenly, leaving the house engulfed in complete darkness. James grabbed Ella's hand to reassure her, speaking in a trembling yet steady voice. "Ella, it's okay. I'm here. Everything will be fine." Ella's father stormed forward angrily, saying, "I told you to stay away from her." The tension in the air grew, and each of them could almost feel their hearts racing from the intensity of fear and anger. In a moment of rage, Ella's father attempted to strike James, unaware of where his daughter was in the darkness. But James quickly dodged the blow, causing her father to accidentally hit Ella instead. She collapsed in pain on the floor, clutching her shoulder, overwhelmed by a mix of shock and intense pain. James was filled with fury as he saw Ella hurt. The defiance in his eyes was clear as he steadily approached her father and said in a voice full of anger, "Is this what you intended to do? Hurt your daughter because of your suspicions?" Without giving Ella's father a chance to respond, James lunged at him with force and delivered a powerful blow in defense of Ella. Her father stumbled back, looking at James in shock and disbelief, unable to comprehend what had just happened. He tried to get back up, but found James standing firmly between him and Ella, like a barrier meant to protect her. James said in a stern voice, "This time, I won't let anyone hurt her. If you truly care about her, you need to think about your actions." In that moment, while the atmosphere was tense and filled with anger, Ella cried out in pain, still on the ground. James, who was deeply concerned for Ella, sat beside her and carefully began tending to her wound, trying to ease her pain. He did his best to help her recover, and Ella felt some relief thanks to his care and tenderness. Meanwhile, her father decided to lie down and rest, still in pain from the blow James had dealt him. Suddenly, the ghost appeared once again, speaking in a soft but terrifying voice. "This will be the last time I speak to you. The old lady has been hiding in the basement all this time, and she is now trying to come out." Ella stared at the ghost in shock and asked, "But isn't she on the second floor?" The ghost replied quietly, tinged with fear, "No, she was never there. She's been waiting in the basement all this time, and now she's preparing to ascend. She won't be alone, and she's determined to eliminate all of you." The ghost turned to James, as if placing the burden of responsibility on him, and said in a deep voice, "Protect her well, James. This time, there is no room for error." With those final words, the ghost slowly faded away, leaving Ella and James to face the terror alone, warning them of the old lady's imminent attack. Ella, overwhelmed by deep terror, began crying bitterly, imagining what might happen to her and those she loved. Fear consumed her, but she tried to hold back her tears. James, standing beside her, felt helpless in the face of the situation, but he quickly sat next to her and pulled her into his arms. He whispered in her ear calmly and confidently, "Don't be afraid, Ella. I would die to see you live a peaceful life, a life free of fear. I'll protect you no matter what it costs me. We're ready to face the old lady. We won't let her control us anymore." Ella froze for a moment at his words, feeling warmth in her heart. Those words gave her hope at a time when everything seemed dark. Then, they gathered whatever they could use as weapons against the old lady. Sticks, knives, anything that might help them in their upcoming battle. They headed to her father's room, where he was asleep, and Ella knocked on the door forcefully, calling out in a trembling voice, "Dad, wake up. The old lady is coming out of the basement." But her father, seeming uninterested, responded irritably while laughing mockingly, "There's nothing going on. What about you? You look tired from all this nonsense. Go back to bed." Ella, feeling on the brink of despair, kept trying to convince him, but all he said was, "You're lying. Nothing's happening. Go to sleep." As she cried inside, she felt an overwhelming worry that he didn't believe her, and that time was slipping away without them being able to prepare for the coming confrontation. In those tense moments, the darkness enveloped the place unnaturally. Ella and James were on the second floor, trying to calm themselves and prepare for what might happen. but a feeling of mystery and fear hung over everything. At that moment, they heard a strange sound coming from downstairs, a sound like rustling, breaking the silence that surrounded the house, as if it were coming from a dark, distant place. The sound was getting closer and closer. Ella looked at James, her eyes filled with panic, and whispered in a trembling voice, "Did you hear that?" James nodded with concern and said, "Yes, it sounds like something is moving downstairs. We need to be ready." Suddenly, a loud crashing noise echoed through the house, as if something heavy had moved from its place. The air itself became charged with static electricity, and Ella immediately knew that the old lady had come out of the basement. "Where are you, Ella? Where are you, children?" The old lady screamed in a deep, terrifying voice, echoing throughout the house like an angry spirit. "I will take my revenge on all of you. I will burn you as you burned me." Ella, frozen in terror, saw the shadows moving downstairs. The sound grew more savage, and the house itself seemed to be collapsing under the old lady's power. From the upper floor, they saw the old lady moving with terrifying speed, shifting between rooms as if she were sorting everything for her revenge. Their house, which had been their shelter for so long, began to crack and break apart, with furniture shattering around them. "I will make your lives hell. You will pay for what you did to me," the old lady said in a sharp, terrifying voice, continuing to destroy everything in her path. She moved unnaturally, her eyes filled with hatred. Ella, on the verge of collapsing, grabbed James, and tears began to fall from her eyes. "I don't want to die. I don't want to see my family destroyed," she whispered, feeling helpless in the face of this evil power. James, appearing more steady, gripped her hand firmly and said, "We won't let her control us. We will fight for our survival. We'll defeat her no matter how powerful the old lady is." As the old lady continued her search for them, destroying everything in the house, Ella and James ran as fast as they could to the upper floor, feeling the intense pressure and rising fear. But deep inside them, there was a faint hope that they might survive this terrifying nightmare. In those moments, the father was sitting in his room, trying to calm himself, but he felt something strange filling the space. Strange sounds began seeping from the first floor, soft noises followed by crashing sounds, as if something heavy was moving quickly, and sometimes there were loud screams. Suddenly, the father stood up, feeling fear creeping into his heart, as if something terrible was approaching him. "Who's downstairs?" He called out loudly, running quickly toward the stairs, trying to reach the ground floor to discover the source of the sound. When he reached the bottom of the stairs, the atmosphere felt strangely charged. The lights flickered intensely, and the air in the house became heavy, as if something was waiting. With every step, the father felt an unnatural presence, his heart racing with fear. As he neared the kitchen, he sensed something eerie behind him, then heard a terrifying voice. "Why did you burn me? Why did you leave me to die? Why didn't you confess your crime?" The old lady's voice echoed, haunting the house. It was heavy with hatred and revenge. Every word from her felt like a stab to his heart. The father, trembling with fear, quickly turned around to find the old lady standing in front of him, her distorted face and eyes glowing with malice. She moved toward him slowly, as if she didn't need to show any kind of force, but inside, she carried an enormous rage. "You're always despicable, you deceitful white devil," the old lady said, laughing an evil laugh. Her words were like knives tearing at the father's heart, and each word came from her enraged conscience. The father, feeling his terror multiply, felt as though the ground beneath his feet was starting to move, as if it was about to swallow him. He couldn't stop himself from stepping backward, but the old lady followed him. Why did you do this to me?" she said in her haunting voice, drawing closer, her eyes filled with hatred. "I will make you pay for everything." The father was in a state of sheer panic, her words echoing in his mind, and he couldn't respond. He had no idea how to face this nightmare that he had created with his own hands. As the old lady approached the father and screamed poisoned words in his face, the father was in a state of extreme panic. He felt that he had no other choice. With a trembling hand, he grabbed a sharp knife from the kitchen and ran toward the old lady, determined to kill her before she could kill him. But in a split second, as if she had been waiting for this attack, she stretched out her hands with incredible speed and grabbed his hand tightly, as if she knew exactly what he was going to do. The father tried to retreat, but her grip was like stone, and he couldn't break free. Then, with brutal force, the old lady pulled a large sword from beneath her robe, sharp as a razor. In a swift motion, she struck the father's head with a deadly blow, with such power that it severed his head from his body. His head fell to the ground, while his body trembled in the final moments of life. "You cursed devil!" the old lady said in a savage voice as she stabbed the corpse again. Then she pulled something strange from her pocket. She lit the body with strangely colored flames, setting it on fire and quickly turning the body to ash. Meanwhile, upstairs, Ella stood silently, her eyes filled with tears, but she was so terrified that she couldn't make a sound. She watched as her father met his fate, and although her heart was about to explode from sadness, she couldn't do anything. James, who had been standing beside Ella the whole time, placed his hand on her shoulder in an attempt to comfort her. "Ella, don't be afraid. I'm here with you. We will face this together, and I will never leave you no matter what." Ella, with tears streaming down her face, looked at James with a broken expression, feeling powerless against what had happened. But James's words eased her heart a little, despite the fear that still consumed her. "I'm here with you, and I'll always protect you. We'll make this night end, and we'll face her together," James said, gently wiping away her tears, trying to ease the pain and fear she was feeling. As the old lady felt an immense rage, she threatened Ella, determined to drag her to hell with her. "You are the beautiful girl I will pounce on. I will burn you as I burned everyone," she said in a voice filled with hatred, as she slowly approached Ella. But James stood firmly between them. His eyes were blazing with anger and protection. "You will not touch her, even if it costs me my life," James said firmly, positioning himself between the old lady and Ella, trying to prevent her from taking another step. In that moment, the old lady ascended to the second floor, targeting Ella, while laughing a hideous laugh and launching terrifying threats. She entered her son's room, which had been reduced to ruins. The place was filled with the stench of ash and burnt corpses, and all that remained was the darkness and destruction left by death. But in an instant, the old lady heard the sound of a door opening behind her. Her panic and rush to follow the sound of the door did not escape James and Ella, who had climbed to the roof, leaving the battle inside behind them. The old lady chased after them, her eyes full of hatred, not turning back and not closing the door, as she had done with the other doors in the house. She was ready to destroy everyone in the house and wouldn't let them escape. Ella, standing on the edge of the roof with James, her heart pounding, knew that this moment was crucial. The walls began to crack, and the air grew suffocating as the old lady drew closer, but James held her hand and said, "We will not let her defeat us, no matter the difficulty. We're in this together, and we won't let her take you." Ella, despite her intense fear, could feel some strength coming from James's words, and she gained a little hope amidst the chaos. As the old lady slowly ascended to the roof, she laughed an evil laugh that echoed in the air, each step adding to the dread that hung heavily, filled with fear. When she reached the top, she looked at Ella and James with hatred in her eyes. "You are as weak as your foolish father," she said sarcastically, taking step by step closer to them. "Why did you kill him? He was a good man. He was just trying to save himself." Ella, who had been silently crying, lifted her head and looked at her with sadness and dignity. "Good?" she asked with a trembling voice. "Good because he burned me? Good because he didn't show mercy? Are you crazy?" The old lady laughed again, saying, "You all lied to me. He killed me, and you paid the price for it. But I will take your life, girl, because you are just like them, just a tool to complete my revenge." But James, standing beside Ella, could no longer tolerate her threats. "And you evil woman, have become worse than all of them. You killed her father, and you won't let her live in peace, but you will fall here." The old lady looked at him with a wicked smile and said, "Don't speak, you filthy child. You all will vanish in the end. There's no one who can stop me now." As the harsh words flew between them, James and Ella both knew that this battle could be their end. Everything in the air felt threatening, and the old lady was about to exact her revenge. But James tightened his grip on the knife he held and took a step forward. "If I must save you from the hands of this wicked old woman, I will do it no matter what it costs me." As the old lady laughed an evil laugh and glared at Ella and James, she knew that this moment could either be her end or the beginning of another one. "Surrender, children," she said mockingly, relishing her ability to destroy them all. But James, who was not ready to give up, moved quickly. He stabbed the old lady in her foot with all his strength, believing he had stopped her, but she didn't retreat. She only let out a slight cry of pain. In response, she drew her large sword and launched a swift attack toward James. The old lady was thirsty for revenge, and she swung the sword viciously, attempting to decapitate James. But at the last moment, with a sudden movement, James jumped backward, giving way to Ella, who was watching the scene, feeling fear consuming her. In that moment, she decided to fight, to protect herself and her beloved no matter the cost. Suddenly, in a decisive moment, Ella ran toward the old lady and struck her hard in the back. Shock was evident on the old lady's face, and she screamed in unexpected pain. "You demons!" she shouted, swaying in place, trying to balance on her feet. But rage filled the old lady's eyes, and she prepared for her revenge. In the blink of an eye, she lifted her foot and struck James in the chest, causing him to stagger backward. But she wasn't satisfied with that. She quickly grabbed him, and in a moment of wickedness, she tried to slice off Ella's neck. Ella was in shock, feeling indescribable mental pain, but she didn't retreat. There was a gap in her courage, but she desperately needed to summon the strength she didn't know she had. The old lady was still suffering from the pain after the blow to her neck, but her sword fell to the ground, putting her in a temporarily weakened state. However, she did not give up. She let out a loud scream filled with anger and vengeance, threatening them with every ounce of evil. "I'll burn you all." Then, she pulled out something strange, resembling the tool she had used to burn Ella's son's body, and pointed it at them. The old lady's intent was clear, as she prepared to seek revenge at any cost. But James, feeling the urgent need to end this battle, grabbed her large sword again and charged toward her with all his strength. With one decisive strike, the sword pierced the old lady's abdomen, making her stagger backward, scream in pain, and fall to the ground. But even in this moment, the old lady still had her wicked determination. She rose once more and rushed toward Ella, attempting to take her revenge. However, Ella, having learned from their previous battle, swiftly dodged her attack and took a step back. In that moment, James didn't waste the opportunity. He ran after the old lady and struck her head with his sword with all his might. Her head fell to the ground, but the cursed body of the old lady continued to move as if she hadn't died yet. The movement was still eerie and terrifying, but James had decided to end it once and for all. Gathering all his strength, he delivered one final, fatal blow to her body, causing it to fall from the edge. Finally, the movement stopped completely. The house sank into a chilling silence after this event, except for the heavy breathing of James and Ella, who came together after the fierce battle. Everything had finally ended, and the threat that had haunted them was gone forever. After long moments of silence and dread, when everything had finally come to an end, James looked at Ella with eyes full of tenderness and courage, and said to her in a calm and heartfelt voice, "It's over. I protected you, and I will never leave you. I will always strive to protect you, and I will be with you forever." Ella smiled, her eyes filled with tears, but these were tears of victory and relief. She said in a soft voice, yet filled with love, "You are my hero, James. I never thought I would find someone like you who would fight for my life and my protection. You are more than just a friend. You are my family, and you are the reason I'm still alive." In that moment, they exchanged a kiss full of love and reassurance, and the nightmare they had lived through together erased all the worry and torment in their hearts. They felt that they had overcome their deepest fears, and that the future ahead of them was filled with hope. But the lesson of this story lies in the fact that true strength does not lie in the sword or in fighting, but in believing in others, in standing together to face challenges, and in the love that binds us to our loved ones. In the end, nothing is stronger than believing in someone who shares your journey, no matter how difficult it may be, and nothing is more wonderful than the feeling of not facing fears alone. They had learned that true courage comes from within the heart, and that the determination to overcome hard times becomes stronger when there is someone standing beside you. 10 years later, James, now 25 years old, married Ella, who had turned 20. Over time, they had wonderful children and lived a life filled with love and happiness. James became a successful businessman and very wealthy, and everything in their life became better than ever before. They lived in a beautiful home, far away from all the fears and darkness they had faced in the past. James and Ella lived their lives happily, and each day was filled with joy and peace, away from the shadow of the past. Life was brighter than ever. And here we are at the end of the video. If you're still not subscribed to the channel, you better subscribe quickly before the old lady comes and starts chasing you to chop off your head. Yes, for sure. Subscribing is your only way to escape the old lady's fate. Think about it. Make it the last thing you do today before the torment hits you. Subscribe quickly before you regret it. And those who don't will lose their heads.